At this time, all over the world, many people were receiving superpowers. They were divided into two factions, good and evil. However, this young man didn't choose either side. He just wanted to be a shipper, delivering exactly 10 orders before going home. Today, he was making a delivery when a beautiful woman suddenly thrust a cage table straight into his face. Both of them fell to the ground. The woman begged for help, claiming she was being chased by thugs. Despite her pitiful appearance, the young man immediately refused to assist her. Just then, the thugs caught up. Their leader, with superpowers at level 4, demanded the woman repay her gambling debts. Feeling it was her own problem, the young man prepared to leave, but the thug stopped him, annoyed by his presence. Realizing he couldn't avoid trouble, the young man displayed some strength by summoning a terrifying dragon, scaring the thug into submission. Finally, with a powerful kick, he knocked the thug out cold. After counting the unconscious thug as defeated, the young man continued with his delivery, leaving the bewildered woman behind. She couldn't believe what had just happened. She tried to test his powers, but the measuring device malfunctioned, indicating that he was hiding his true strength. It turned out this man, Tuan, had traveled through countless lifetimes, but never lived past the age of 25. Everywhere he went, he became the top figure, but died at 25 due to ridiculous reasons, such as being a demon king with numerous wives who sewed him to death in a past life. Determined to live a mundane life, he set a standard for himself as a shipper, delivering only 10 orders a day. However, each customer left lengthy reviews, preventing him from achieving peace. Soon, the landlord came to demand increased rent, making Tuan consider finding a roommate. However, he feared becoming an idol if he advertised on Facebook. He reluctantly posted an ad on Yahoo, and immediately, someone responded. Terrified by the swift response, Tuan was surprised to find the person was the same woman he had reluctantly helped before. She barged in, declaring herself the head of the intelligence department of the association. Despite the low pay, she convinced him to accept the offer, believing future members might receive better compensation. Just as they were about to leave, another person showed up, wanting to be their roommate. Surprisingly, it was a cute girl with golden hair. Despite having lived through 10 lifetimes, Tuan couldn't resist the charm of a beautiful woman. Before he could say anything, the other woman ran to embrace the new arrival, introducing her as Miu and emphasizing the need for harmony and fairness among them. Amidst this chaos, a superhero burst into the room, thrown by a villain. Despite Miu's fear, she saw this as an opportunity to witness Tuan's abilities. Meanwhile, Tuan, fearing becoming the top student, dropped out of school since kindergarten. Suddenly, the golden-haired girl screamed and rushed towards her sister, while Tuan swiftly intervened to protect her from the villain's attack. Despite the villain's enhanced powers, Tuan effortlessly dodged his attacks, reminiscing about his previous lives spent in hell, and having no intention of working overtime there again. Suddenly, Tuan froze when he saw the scene before him. That scoundrel has ruined my seat, and my refrigerator as well. There were so many eggs in there, he exclaimed furiously. As he was about to vent his frustration, he heard a voice murmuring something about hissing. Tuan kicked the moaning villain straight in the face. The attacker disappeared into the night sky, leaving Tuan regretful for not detaining him for compensation. Miu witnessed everything with silent joy, knowing she had hit the jackpot. However, before she could fully celebrate, she panicked upon hearing that a man had been attacked. Kiat had regained consciousness at some point and witnessed everything. However, he quickly had his memory erased by the special ability of a golden-haired girl. To keep this incident hidden, the two Kias had to know about hypnosis, an extremely rare ability. Even if not at the required level, they would still be welcomed by the association. At that moment, the association's cleanup team arrived at the apartment, led by the secretary, Kim-sam, who could stabilize others' emotions. While the team was busy tidying up, Miu lied, claiming that the absent-minded man had defeated Lucas, successfully fooling Kim-sam. She promised to submit the matter to the association for approval, and the money would be transferred to Tuvan's account in a few days. Before leaving, Kim-sam gave Tuan her phone number, seeming suspicious but was interrupted by Miu. With everything settled, Tuan finally finished patching the hole in the wall. He apologized to Natka, only to find out she was still eager to stay. However, as Tuan turned away, Natka's gaze seemed odd. Suddenly, a spider appeared under Tuvan's foot, but he inadvertently crushed it. Surprisingly, it recovered, its joints straightening as if nothing had happened. Nevertheless, Tuan ultimately squashed it. Recently, the city had been plagued by numerous spiders, the only thing that scared Tuan. Elsewhere, a group of spiders surrounded a handsome man, controlled by a spider queen intending to extract blood to nourish her offspring. Unexpectedly, this muscle-bound man turned out to be gay, which dampened her mood. He ordered the spiders to devour him completely except for his bones. Back at the apartment, Tokmyun rushed out of the bathroom screaming for help as spiders swarmed in. Luckily, Miu bravely used her long legs to defeat many of them. However, the situation remained dire. Upon returning, they'd found their white-faced roommate frozen in place. "Why doesn't the rear move? Is it broken?" he muttered, fearing living with them. Enraged at the thought of cohabitating with the spiders, Tuan unleashed a massive fireball, destroying them all. Despite the shock of his roommates, he prepared to deliver more packages. However, Tuan kept encountering receiving issues, leading him to angrily dispose of some packages. For the first time, he received a 4-star rating, signaling progress in his work and bringing him immense joy. Meanwhile, the Spider Queen finished consuming another handsome man, only to be attacked by a female hero. Despite being shot and pierced, she quickly recovered using her spiders. After defeating the level 4 hero, the Spider Queen resumed her hunt for more prey. As she left, she encountered Tuan, who was delivering packages again. Seeing the large spider-human hybrid, he shivered, recalling his fear of them, especially since his reincarnation as Cao Tang. Despite advising the spiders to abandon vengeance and become Buddhists, they ignored him. Eventually, they offered to release him if he could satisfy their desires by weaving a new garment for each one. Unable to refuse, Tuan reluctantly crafted the garments, haunted by this recurring nightmare. Upon returning to his room, Tuan eagerly counted the money, only to find something disturbing beneath it. He woke up to find a Lolita girl under 18. She was preparing a report for the trial, which he found suspicious. Just then, a girl with short hair knocked on the door, revealing herself as his sister. Over breakfast, she didn't mind the silly compliments from the idiot and praised her younger sister for growing so quickly. Tuan agreed, realizing that Vuong was too small for her age. However, he didn't underestimate her, knowing she was the tribal leader of the Mima tribe, possessing the most powerful hypnotic ability. Natham immediately shot an arrow straight at Tuan, causing a burst of pink light. "As your older sister, I will help you establish a better relationship with this lucky landlord," she declared. But before she could finish, Natham had to dodge when the man in front of her didn't react and even suggested she leave if she was bored. Fuming at the insult, she aimed her arrow at Tuan with overwhelming desire. In the blink of an eye, Tuan was ensnared in an illusionary scene called the love net created by Natham. "If I don't agree, I won't be able to leave," Tuan thought, feeling intrigued rather than fearful. For the first time in 36 lifetimes, he was experiencing this virtual reality from Canada, deciding to play along for a while. But as he thought about going to work, he decided to deal with the group of women first. After subduing them, he confronted the tribal chief and transformed into a demonic lord, asserting his straightness but ultimately leaving to work. Meanwhile, Natka, seeing her sister distressed, grew worried. Just then, Miu returned and overheard everything. She realized Natham wasn't just the Mima tribal chief, but also a member of the notorious Thatong organization, specialized in evil deeds. Investigating further, she discovered it was all a dark illusion. Inside, Natham had unconsciously activated the second-level illusion, surrounded by endless void and a stone statue depicting Tuan as the master. Suddenly, numerous mirrors appeared, reflecting scenes of Tuvan's demise in each lifetime. Natham realized he was no different from a monster and surrendered. However, escaping the illusion proved challenging, even as she tried to break free. Fortunately, Tuan appeared and shattered the illusion, refusing to play along any longer. Once outside, Natham, enraged, vented her anger on her sister, deciding not to stay here anymore. In reality, she had come to take her sister back to fulfill their tribal duties, but Natka seemed unwilling. As tensions rose between the sisters, Tuan intervened, citing the rent issue. Natka apologized and promised to return after resolving the household matters. As Natka left with her sister, they encountered a large group of tall guards, and Tuan observed their wealth with suspicion. Back at home, Natka was prepared for a matchmaking meeting related to the family's economic interests, which she reluctantly accepted, despite her inner reluctance. After the meeting, Natka returned home to find her sister receiving a middle-aged man. He circled around her like merchandise, making crude comments about her body. Although infuriated, Natka's sister laughed it off. Natka felt helpless but had to endure, considering the family's economic situation. Despite the pain, she excused herself quietly, not wanting to hear any more hurtful words. However, Tuan suddenly appeared behind her, advising her not to cry as her makeup had already washed away. Initially defiant, she was startled to learn that Tuan had entered through the main gate as a delivery person and had not locked the door. Fearful of being discovered by her sister, Natka followed Tuan to escape through the back gate, only to encounter the imposing uncle who had already seen through them. To their surprise, he revealed their forbidden love affair, a wealthy young lady and a poor delivery man. Despite attempting to explain, the uncle adamantly refused to help, unleashing flames to attack Tuan, believing that a slightly difficult love would make the plot more interesting. However, Tuan easily subdued him, forcing the uncle to exert all his power to escape. As he questioned Tuan about his family, Tuan confirmed he was just a delivery guy. However, the uncle found it hard to believe given Tuan's strength. As he was about to join the association, he suddenly collapsed. It was revealed that Natkat had used hypnotism to prevent harm to both men. She quickly hid the uncle in the bushes and urged Tuan to leave. Despite Tuvan's reluctance, reminding her he wouldn't refund any extra rent, she accepted, knowing she had to prepare for the wedding next month. As she bid him farewell tearfully, he left quietly, proving himself to be single and proud. Miu leaped in to intervene, threatening to report to the association if he didn't help. With no escape route left, he agreed to assist but questioned that she found fault with him. Tuan was also at a loss for words, internally convinced that if there was trouble this lifetime, it must be caused by this woman. Surprisingly, Miu's eyes sparkled, not expecting them to come to her aid like this. However, when Tuan asked her about the marriage issue, she found it difficult to speak. He asked her once more, stating he would help her if she admitted she didn't want to get married. Otherwise, he would consider the incident null. Looking at the man before her, Miu suddenly felt an immense trust, her emotions surging. She admitted she didn't want to get married, unwilling to be someone else's tool, pleading him to take her away. Seeing her determination, both agreed to help. When asked how, the young man struggled to come up with a plan. Originally, he was here to ensure the guest's safety to avoid police interference. However, now it was best to return to the inn first. If her sister came looking, he would confront her, stating this place treated her as a tool and wasn't worthy of being called a home. The three headed back, unaware that the uncle had overheard everything and was now reassured that his granddaughter had trustworthy friends. Now, as the trio returned, Natham intervened by throwing a banana, which a large man swiftly caught and shoved into his mouth. This man, Kolo, possessed immense strength, eating and drinking excessively. He questioned why Miu hadn't attended the meeting, claiming Thiantam was worried about Vuanthi and Yuduan's marriage and wanted to inquire. Only when Natham confirmed everything was fine did he leave, promising to return. They returned to the inn, tense due to Miu's curiosity about Natka's sister's affiliation with Thadon. Unfortunately, Natka was terrified, not realizing she had escaped the tiger's den only to end up in the wolf's lair. Even Tuan, who was watching TV, was flung away by her control, reminding him of his duty. As Natka expressed her desire to join the association, Miu became passionate about it. Despite her sister's discouragement, Natka expressed her wish to join the association, prompting Miu to help. Tuan noticed her suspicious smile, knowing it couldn't be a good sign. Miu explained that usually, those with abilities needed to pass 2 exams to join the association, a written test and an ability assessment. However, those with mental abilities could have a separate test later. Natka agreed to try anything. The next day, they arrived at the center, where 5 tall towers stood, all belonging to the Hero Association. Training would last for 3 days before entering the association's main headquarters. Tuan reported to the training center while Natka waited in the office. Before entering, Miu reminded Tuan to show some kind of ability. Otherwise, they would want to research further. However, as soon as Tuan stepped in, all the monitoring equipment exploded, including cameras and speakers. Miu, furious, urged him to quickly think of a way to handle his outstanding prowess. If he continued, the association would sound the alarm. Unexpectedly, the machinery here was too weak. Trying to come up with a solution, he placed 2 arrows on his head, attempting to mimic Seiki's superpower to suppress his strength. But it seemed this foolish plan had no alternative. There's no other way. Miu had to drag Tuan reluctantly into a secluded room to avoid causing more trouble. But her style also attracted too much attention, which was extremely dangerous just now. I wonder how they used to measure his level back when he was a child at school. Tuan confirmed again that he had dropped out of kindergarten, so he wasn't sure what price would be paid now for using the device to restrain power on his head. Nakai saw this antenna and immediately had an idea to create a similar device, but more discreet. I can use low-level hypnotic techniques to calculate the frequency of his brain's cortex and then input it into this necklace at an appropriate frequency. If worn, it will control his abilities, but my power value isn't high. I can only maintain it for 3 days, he explained. Miu was delighted to hear this because 3 days were more than enough. After a day of implementation, Nakai successfully created the device, which Miu confirmed worked very well. Finally, my ATM card couldn't fall into someone else's hands. This is where training appointments are made. He'll have to come to the 5th door to complete the procedures. Try to perform well, Miu said. Tuan waited in line for a long time, and finally, there was only one person left, a black man named Nguyen, who had outstanding achievements and was very suitable for the combat department. But in the end, he chose to join the intelligence department. The examiner stamped and confirmed that he could go up to the 13th floor to prepare for training. After a while, Tuan also successfully obtained the stamp and went to the room where he met a colorful character named Edward, Nguyen, and 4 female candidates, all with abilities above level 4. After the introductions, he was tasked with retrieving the class schedule. However, he was stunned to find that the schedule was completely confidential, with only boring subjects like physical education and philosophy all day, which was unacceptable. He had to think of a way to escape from here. Just then, the person in charge walked in, who turned out to be the cleaning team secretary. She began the session by handing out a document, hoping everyone would read it diligently and be able to easily pass the 3-day training. Seeing everyone's puzzled faces, except for the 4-eyed kid named Hodom, who seemed to be a bookworm, the secretary introduced the world's various associations, totaling 5 union departments of talented people, with our city's union department dominating the countries in Asia and the United Nations, rotating every 5 years, organizing friendly matches between associations, hoping everyone would strive to become the country's representatives. At this point, Tuan couldn't focus anymore because he was facing an exam. He explained to Miu that just participating would guarantee an absolute score. He was about to leave when Miu grabbed him because she couldn't let the money tree slip away. According to the association's regulations, if any member leaves voluntarily, they will be ranked top from below, and for Tuan, whether counting down or counting up, being top one means he won't escape death. Moving forward isn't an option, and going backward isn't either. He was extremely confused, feeling truly helpless. As the countdown reached the 3rd day, everyone was completely exhausted from the heap of theory and eagerly awaited the test to demonstrate themselves. Only Tuan seemed frozen like a statue, unable to stop thinking about his impending death. Hodom, the curious kid, wanted to ask the person in charge about the test, but received only a refusal. This was the association's rule, so it couldn't be said. We have 30 seconds to start the test. Everyone, please be prepared. Immediately, the lights in the room went out, causing everyone to panic. Only Kim-sam, the secretary, began counting down while wearing an oxygen mask to avoid inhaling the sleep gas. Gradually, everyone around began to faint, but of course, they couldn't affect Tuan. However, he still had to lie down and pretend to faint, while Kim-sam began to announce that the official exam had begun. After a while, everyone began to wake up and realize they were in a different room. The TV screen showed a person's face, welcoming everyone who participated in the association's training test. Before entering, please choose an item from the table, one for each person. The four-eyed kid knew that the 3 items were fur coats, bandages, and chocolate, suitable for cold climates, while the other 3 were suitable for hot climates, so we could be divided into 2 groups quickly. Everyone received their own items as predicted by the four-eyed kid, and based on the props, 2 teams were formed, including Tuan, Edward, and Zhuanheep in door number 1, leaving the other door for Nguyen Treat, Hodong, and Zuanho. Before leaving, they were given an additional device to display the progress of their team and the opponents to increase competitiveness. Just as they were about to start, Zuanho rushed over and hugged Zhuanheep tightly, not wanting to leave her little sister. It seemed that the younger sister listened to Zuanho obediently, not saying anything. Tuan stepped forward and promised to protect Zhuanheep, and only then did his older sister reluctantly accept. "Don't worry, we'll see each other again soon," she said. The test began, and everyone was urged to make the most of every minute to complete it. Good luck, they were wished. True to their words, they were greeted with 2 completely contrasting environments. One side was a desert, while the other was an icy glacier. As soon as the gate closed behind them, the 3 felt the real cold. "This way, I'll only have about 5 centimeters left. I might even lose that," Edward exclaimed, realizing he only had 1 coat. Tuan, however, gave his coat to Zhuanheep, but when he saw Edward shivering, she gave him the coat instead. Edward refused, saying he was just pretending to be cold. Tuan urged them to move quickly as the temperature was dropping rapidly. If they caught a cold, they would gradually lose consciousness, then suffer serious disorder, and eventually, their hearts would stop beating. "We just need to keep moving. We can still resist the -10 degrees Celsius cold here," Tuan reassured. Edward seemed hopeful of Tuan's abilities, as the organizers hadn't given any instructions or goals. Tuan couldn't act rashly because he knew the judges were observing their team's behavior. As he walked, he tried to spot any cameras but found them well hidden. However, after a few steps, Edward demanded to hug Tuan because of the cold. Seeing how pitiful he looked, Zhuanheep gave him the coat, saying, "Just wear it for a bit. You'll need to stay warm." Luckily, Tuan spotted a cave and suggested they take refuge there. Although it delayed their plan slightly, it ensured their safety. Zhuanheep found plenty of dry wood inside, which was fortunate. However, Tuan suspected that the designer of this challenge had prearranged everything, likely with malicious intent. The issue now was whether anyone in the cave had fire abilities. He was disappointed to receive only shakes of the head when he asked, but there was no other choice. As Tuan was about to ignite the fire, Zhuanheep intervened, saying she would handle it. She rubbed 2 pieces of wood together until a flame appeared. Seeing this, Tuan was impressed, and Zhuanheep eagerly joined in the planning. Contrary to her initial reserved demeanor, Edward had also noticed something odd from the outside. She had been overly protected by her older sister. Tuan advised everyone to showcase their strengths because besides the results, the association would use it to evaluate them. He noticed that Zhuanheep's abilities weren't low either, but Edward seemed hopeless, with only chocolate and bandages left. Perhaps these were clues. Suddenly, Edward heard a loud noise approaching. They immediately assumed a combat stance, but it turned out to be just a small, cute snow bear. Seeing a beautiful girl, the bear rushed over and behaved playfully. However, Edward felt something was wrong. A small creature like that shouldn't have made such a loud noise. Just as he was about to voice his suspicions, red eyes and a loud roar echoed from deep within the cave. It was a giant snow monster. Zhuanheep recognized it and glanced down at the cotton ball below, realizing it resembled the creature. Sensing they had been exposed, the monster extended its claws to attack. But luckily, they dodged in time. Tuan immediately recognized it as a clue to lead the way. However, Zhuangdeep, still angry, rushed forward and delivered a powerful kick, sending it stumbling back. "Anyone who betrays us will never be forgiven," she declared. Tuan advised her not to provoke because they needed to gather information. Quietly, he emitted an oppressive aura, causing the monster to retreat in fear. To avoid suspicion, he joked that it must have a stomach ache now. Zhuangdeep quickly followed up with a powerful blow, knocking the monster unconscious. Edward witnessed everything and couldn't help but doubt what had happened earlier. Clearly, the monster had been scared off. Realizing this, Tuan quickly led them to search for the clue. With Tuan's analysis, Edward concluded that the clue was above them, likely held by the colorful character because no one else would bring along a small creature. Tuan waited patiently and finally praised him for being so astute. He approached the small creature and wondered where it was hiding the clue. Seeing the angry faces of the two, threatening to dissect it, the creature cried out in fear. Without delay, it handed over a key. "Smart move," Tuan commented. Before leaving, each member of the team gave it an apple to placate it, leaving aside the issue of being overly protective. They continued their journey happily, unaware that their every move was being monitored by the association's surveillance room. Indeed, the blonde boy seemed to hold a high position and had been watching them. Tuan seemed a bit more special than the others. The second group is trekking across the dry desert, and the black man is having a headache with the two kids accompanying him, bickering all day long. After a while, Zhuangho couldn't bear it anymore, so she took off her shirt to cool down and demanded a break. Hodong checked the watch to report that the other team was leading, so we also need to quickly search for clues. Suddenly, a scorpion approached Hodong, making Gayantri alert and asking him to stop. With just a touch from his finger, he easily paralyzed the scorpion, which is considered the most poisonous in the desert. Hodong turned pale, remembering that this species tends to act in herds. Indeed, several more emerged from the sand, frightening Zhuangho. Then hundreds began to appear, just as dusk was approaching. Fortunately, Gayantri discovered a hiding place and told the other two to go there first, while he stayed behind to deal with the overwhelming number. He immediately strengthened himself and unleashed countless lightning bolts, then charged to eliminate them all. Unexpectedly, when one was defeated, another emerged from the sand, even more aggressive, chasing after the three of them. Thankfully, they reached the fortress gate in time, and the scorpions stopped chasing them and retreated as if they were afraid of something. Indeed, a big commotion had occurred. It turned out to be a giant scorpion king. Hodong quickly noticed it, as it was plotting to force them into the fortress. If they didn't enter, they would surely be worn out by these scorpions, leading to their demise. Zhuangho and Gayantri heard this and immediately asked Hodong whether they should enter or fight. Before they could finish their question, Zhuangho had already rushed in ahead of them. How come she didn't say so earlier and just stood analyzing everything? In the surveillance room, everything was still being monitored by the blonde boy. This time, there was also an elderly man with red hair, a mysterious figure. They admitted that monitoring the intelligence department was more interesting than other departments, as they watched Tuan's team analyze clues like watching a reality show. At this moment, they were standing in front of a shrine, discussing whether to enter or not. The intention was quite clear. First, to wear down their physical strength, then to lure them in, as if they were being led by the nose. However, Zhuangho remained optimistic, inviting everyone in to show their strengths, which boosted morale outside. But as soon as they entered, she felt extremely cold and shivered inside. The temperature difference was too much, and her clothes had been thrown away, so there was nothing left. Fortunately, Gayantri still had the sunscreen, which unexpectedly could be used like this. Hodong noticed that the target was the wooden chest in front of them, but there must be a trap. Before he could say a word, he saw Zhuangho standing by the chest, calling for them to come over and open it. On the chest was a lock that he couldn't open. Hodong felt a little embarrassed and stepped forward to warn her to be careful, but ironically, he fell victim to a trap. Just a moment, and the pillars disappeared, along with a very strong tremor approaching. Indeed, a giant appeared in front of them, holding a huge axe. Not only that, but there was also another one holding a sharp spear this time. But strangely, they just stood still, not moving. Hodong immediately thought that they were being controlled by the bricks under his feet. But even Xuanho on the other side, who had just put the box down, made the two men freeze, making Guyan Treat very scared. Ultimately, what was controlling their movements? At the same time, Tuan's team was wandering aimlessly towards the iceberg. The key, given by the narcissistic guy, had been used to open something, but now there were no clues. However, intelligence work requires a lot of observation and analysis. Xuanheap suspected something under the transparent layer of ice below. Edward found it amusing but also praised her for her rich imagination. While Tuan had some doubts, he activated the X-ray mode to look through. Indeed, there was a structure below, but the problem was how to communicate without arousing suspicion. Tuan had to resort to an old trick of pretending to be naive, analyzing for a while, and finally Edward was the first to realize. He decided to break the ice because he thought using powers would damage what was underneath. Xuanheap disagreed because it would take too much time, and the temperature was dropping. She was already starting to shiver here. It's an artificial environment, and the temperature is certainly controlled by humans. The inspection team doesn't hope we stay here for too long. Edward immediately gave his shirt to Xuanho to do the job of breaking the ice. Tuan began to worry because he didn't know any way to break the ice quickly. Besides using powers, the temperature had indeed dropped already, and they couldn't endure for long. He feared they couldn't hold on much longer, and if they got too cold, they would lose consciousness, leading to more serious disorders, even unusual undressing behavior, and finally the heart-stopping beating. Outside, the blonde boy in the surveillance room also felt that Tuan's team was a bit slow, but still affirmed to the red-haired master that Tuan seemed very interesting. I've been observing him for a long time. It seems he can easily cope with situations, but always thinks of ways for others to handle it. The red-haired master agreed because he had previously looked at the list of names of this Tuan, not passed through the examination, all recommended by Miu Miu, so he had to investigate clearly. At this moment, Edward was lamenting, not knowing how long he had to dig. Xuanheap had to comfort him tirelessly, her mouth tired. Suddenly, she took off her jacket, preparing for battle, as a tree stump was rushing towards them. With just one strike, Xuanheap easily shattered it and discovered that the culprit was a snow beast. It wasn't alone but leading a pack of 10, surprising both of them. Only Tuan remained calm and realized that it was just physical labor, no need to search further. He activated the summoning mode, advising Xuanho to quickly control them like last time. But Edward was quicker, drawing his sword ready to attack. This time, he said, rushing in to exterminate them. But before he could finish, Tuan quickly stopped him, suggesting leaving one alive to help them dig through the ice. As soon as he finished speaking, the snow beasts immediately stopped and looked down, including Edward, who had approached them. They didn't move even when he was close. At that moment, one of them opened its mouth and emitted a dazzling light. Nobody knew what it was, but Edward looked extremely satisfied, as if he had just reached the summit. Xuanheap, sensing danger, hurried to intervene, but the same fate befell her as the others. Her body began to heat up, wanting to take off all her clothes like the snow beasts. They continued emitting bright light, causing both of them to scream loudly. The urgent situation forced Tuan to step in. He exerted an extremely strong pressure, easily making them froth at the mouth and lose consciousness. It was already dark, and Tuan quickly set up a tent for the two and lit a fire for warmth. Edward was the first to wake up, seeming to remember nothing. He stood up intending to go to Tuan, but was very scared when he found his legs soft. Asking Tuan, he learned that they were attacked by monsters, weakening his kidneys, but luckily he survived. Xuanheap also woke up in a panic, realizing she was not wearing clothes. She felt desperate, sitting in a corner until Tuan reassured her, telling her to relax as they had stopped just in time, so nothing happened. Edward asked about the snow beasts, and Tuan pointed to where they were sitting, huddled together. They even wanted to help dig through the ice for them. Unable to hide it any longer, He confessed to the two that he possessed hypnotic abilities, so he could easily control them. He felt lucky that Miu hadn't registered a specific power for him. Now, let's pass by and see how far they've dug. Tuan hadn't done anything yet, but made the snow beast startle. Calming down, it just pointed down the hole, meaning it was done digging. He praised this group's brothers for their good job. Everyone began to jump down, and indeed, they saw a lock. Tuan inserted the key, and immediately the progress indicator jumped to 60%. Back to Team B, they were tired of standing, and still hadn't found the cause of the two statues' impact. Hodong wondered how Xuanho could have passed through there, but she didn't remember. I just jumped and hopped, didn't pay much attention, and then I was here, she said. Trying to remember, it seemed she jumped to the left and then 2 squares forward. Then she jumped 2 more squares. Hodong listened carefully and started to count. Starting from his left side, then 2 squares forward, and jumping to the middle square, which was square. If the steps were as she described, there would be many possibilities and give him a headache. Hodong sternly asked Xuanho for clarification, but the result was still not remembered. She threw out a few ideas, just need to go behind the statue, but they were all dismissed by Hodong, who considered them too complicated. With a hot temper, she blamed the others for making the problem too complex and left them to deal with it on her own. The two tried to stop her, but she jumped to destroy the stone statue. However, it was too fast, and it launched an attack unexpectedly. Luckily, Nguyen redirected it with a powerful electric shock, saving Xuanho in the nick of time. But its attack hit a pillar, and if it fell, the stone statue would become uncontrollable. Fortunately, Nguyen quickly released a strong electric current, shattering the pillar into small pieces. While everyone was blaming Xuanho for being so destructive, Nguyen realized that the giant stone figure only reacted because Xuanho initiated the attack. After saying that, he swapped places with Hodong to let him calmly analyze. Xuanho passed 2 squares to the left, jumped 2 squares forward, so at least 8 even squares to the left are safe. Combining the data Xuanho had just remembered helped him eliminate many options. Finally, Hodong affirmed that even-numbered square positions would be safer. Do you want to try it? Nguyen totally trusted him and jumped to the next even squares. Indeed, a giant axe flew towards him, but he easily avoided it and landed safely. The axe also stopped exactly as Hodong predicted. Just a moment later, the two were safely through the area, truly worthy of the 5th-level calculators. Now it's time to unlock. It seems that pressing the same even squares as before will do. The chest was quickly opened, revealing a red button inside. Xuanho quickly pressed the button, causing the floor to slowly collapse into a tunnel, while Hodong's watch vibrated, signaling that both teams had reached 100% progress in the exam. Hodong confidently stepped down and assured everyone that there would be no more traps. At the end was a very spacious white room, with a stone pedestal at the end with a red button. Hodong was secretly glad that he hadn't seen the other group yet, when suddenly Tuan and Xuanho jumped down from above, each holding one of the 2 wives, looking very frightened, as if they had just been through a long ordeal. Finally, everyone gathered at the same time, but the outcome was still undecided. Everyone raced to the red button, not knowing what it was. Xuanho saw her younger sister faster and tried to stop her, but Xuanheap didn't listen anymore. This was a competition, so she couldn't give in. Sorry, big sister, Xuanheap said, refusing to back down. Xuanho couldn't believe her younger sister would disobey her and was extremely angry. She directly jumped in to set things right, but her sister was blocked by Xuanheap, which made Xuanheap furious. She grabbed her sister by the hair and pulled her shirt, and the 2 sisters got into a family fight, making the men scared too. The war between women was not to be underestimated. Only Tuan was secretly happy because his plan had succeeded. Back at the ice cave entrance, the 3 had a serious conversation about the relationship between the 2 sisters, Xuanho and Xuanheap. Xuanho admitted that she still wanted to do everything, but her older sister wouldn't allow it because she considered her immature. Tuan proposed a solution. Her older sister would accept not protecting her anymore. Just say this, he suggested, and make it seem like you're very capable. Since you were born 2 minutes earlier, you think you're the eldest. This foolish woman scratches her face. Seeing this, Tuan was secretly pleased that his plan was working. Next, all he needed to do was to have Edward hold back Nguyen treat, while he pretended to fight Hodong, allowing Hodong to press the button, and his plan would continue to flow smoothly. When Edward successfully tempted Nguyen treat to attack, Tuan realized he had miscalculated because this method was no different from hitting a dead end. Since there were only 2 teams in this competition, losing would still put him at the top from bottom up. There was no need to die again. Hodong found it strange that the other side hadn't come to stop him yet, feeling puzzled. Zuan Ho was currently being held back, while Nguyen treat couldn't escape temporarily. Edward, the biggest variable, was completely unpredictable to Tuan. While Hodong was calculating, Tuan came up with another idea. As long as the 2 teams didn't determine the winner, that would be enough. He ran to where the 2 sisters, Xuanheep and Zuan Ho, were and teased them, asking them not to argue anymore. Whatever happens, let's talk about it at home. It's normal for younger sisters to be stronger than older sisters. No need to worry too much. Anyway, the younger sister doesn't want to live in the shadow of an incompetent person like you. Zuan Ho, hearing this, was very angry, and Xuanheep, feeling insulted by her sister, couldn't control herself. Both of them rushed to attack the gossiping guy. Seizing the opportunity, Tuan propelled himself forward, accidentally bumping into Edward and taking him along. His goal was to charge straight at the stone pedestal, causing a huge explosion, destroying the entire room. Fortunately, Hodong, who was nearby, was saved from the explosion by Nguyen treat. The 2 sisters didn't understand what was happening and still maintained their innocence, claiming they didn't use much force. The next day, everyone went to the training class with different expressions. Kim Sam, the secretary, was very angry, blaming the new recruits for turning the intelligence test into a combat course. Because no one pressed the button, the examination team had to cancel the ranking and deducted half of everyone's salary for the first month after taking office. Hearing everyone crying, only Tuan was happily smiling. He promised himself that if he escaped this disaster, he would abstain from meat and chant Buddha for at least 3 days. Nguyen treat noticed this strange behavior and no longer doubted Tuan's unusual points. He regretted not knowing if he was hallucinating or not, but felt that he always restrained himself, even during the exam. Finally, when the time came to announce the top name, Tuan suddenly stood up, sounding very emotional. Kim Sam thought he was dissatisfied, but Tuan immediately denied it and sat back down, feeling extremely happy inside. Finally, they had passed the second disaster. Kim Sam continued to read the name of the last ranked person, Zuan Ho. The punishment would be decided by the head of the department personally. This time, Tuan had gone too far, making his older sister not even want to look at her younger sister's face. Edward turned down, noticing that he was somewhat moved. He truly couldn't understand. Was he crying or laughing, looking terrifying? He comforted Tuan not to think too much because they would soon be colleagues. Kim Sam announced that only the small exam was left, and everyone would pass this time. Today, everyone went home. Tomorrow, at 11 a.m., they would meet the department head. Goodbye for now. So, Tuan happily walked back, his heart filled with joy. Right at that moment, he ran into a blonde-haired boy stepping out of the elevator. The boy immediately caught his attention, and Tuan wondered what had happened to make him look so disheveled. Everything seemed to go smoothly for the next 3 days. Meanwhile, Miu was in trouble, being chased by a creditor demanding money, leaving her with no choice but to sell off all her lipstick. Tuan advised her to cut back on makeup expenses to pay off the debt, warning her against getting oil thrown at her. Miu argued that fear was just a choice, and living happily until death was also a choice, so why not enjoy life? She also pointed out that Tuan seemed upset with her over the recent exam, asking how she could make it up to him. Tuan usually paid off her creditors, saying if she couldn't pay off the debt, she would have to use her body instead. In response, Miu flirtatiously climbed onto Tuan, but he remained unaffected, being a tough guy both inside and out. He only hated her in the story, not me. However, their relationship was just one of cooperation, so he invited her to come down and eat. Just then, Natka excitedly ran in to give documents to Lamiu, but froze when she saw the two entangled. Lamiu jumped down, teasing Tuan before jokingly reminding him to lock the door carefully next time. Natka overheard and felt a bit sad, surprised at how quickly their relationship had progressed. Lamiu then introduced Tuan to Natka, who had been recruited as her intern assistant for 3 months due to her prestigious background. Natka felt unworthy of the special treatment and was a bit sad, but Tuan stepped in to comfort her. Lamiu, feeling jealous, introduced Tuan to Natka, her intern assistant. Lamiu then wanted to negotiate with Tuan regarding Xuanho's low ranking, taking responsibility for the situation. Lamiu dismissed it, stating she had reviewed the examination process and found no report related to him. She also argued that even without his involvement, Xuanho would likely still be ranked last, as she was mature but unable to control her emotions during the exam. Tuan thought it made sense and decided not to argue further. Seeing that they had overcome the ordeal, he invited the two sisters to eat noodles. Natka was happy, thinking eating at home was best because eating out was expensive, even though she was known as a noble lady who had run away from home a few times and had to be brought back every time. Lamiu blamed her younger sister for acting so recklessly, wondering if she had other plans. But enough of the sad talk, they all raised their glasses to celebrate their new home. The three of them happily joined the drinking session, satisfying Tuan. In the past, he had always been tired from running away in each life, so he rarely enjoyed such moments. Although this life had been filled with many troubles, things were going quite well now. After a while of drinking, Lamiu turned to Tuan with a flushed face, asking about Naka's girlfriend criteria. Naka, also curious, proactively inquired, but seeing Tuan not responding, Lamiu jokingly teased him, saying only a fool would like him. Tuan didn't care about romantic relationships and quickly changed the subject, asking about Lamiu's debts. Upon returning, they found the two girls lying unconscious after just a few drinks, surprised at how quickly they had gotten drunk. Tuan admonished them, saying if they couldn't handle alcohol, they shouldn't drink and then had to clean up and wash the dishes. Tuan tried calling Lamiu several times but she didn't respond. Concerned that the two girls might catch a cold sleeping there, he decided to tidy up. As he was about to leave, Lamiu grabbed him, pulling him closer to ask for some water because she was thirsty, not for any other reason. Natka, on the other hand, was still sleeping peacefully. As he carried her into the room, he couldn't help but think that Lamiu could learn a thing or two from Natka to avoid trouble. As he stepped outside, his gaze suddenly changed as he noticed Natham sitting there. Despite the girls drinking alcohol freely in front of him, he remained unmoved. Indeed, he was a special man. It was clear that Natham had come to reclaim someone, but she was mostly teasing Tuan and continuously tried to provoke him to show some emotions. Tuan realized she enjoyed dominating others to satisfy herself. He firmly stated that she couldn't decide her sister's life, as she was already grown and didn't want to depend on anyone. Unexpectedly, his words stirred her and she argued back, claiming that Natka lacked talent from a young age and only used hypnosis. She even dared to suggest marrying her off to become the head of the family, leading their clan. Tuan, uninterested in family matters, asserted that Natka's strengths were something she couldn't have in her lifetime. Just then, Natka went out to get some water, making her older sister startle. However, her expression suggested that she had heard their conversation, all because of Tuan's constant chatter. Realizing this, Tuan couldn't help but feel regretful. He shouldn't have said those words, which made Natka uncomfortable. However, he couldn't understand why he felt so angry, even though it had nothing to do with him. The next morning, Tuan took his wave motorcycle for repairs to make deliveries. He had already spent a lot on it and needed to persist through this time. As he was about to take it for further repairs, he heard Ngayantreat calling him to talk. Their conversation seemed ordinary, but Tuan immediately sensed that he was being probed, so he decided it was better to avoid him in the future. When Tuan introduced himself as someone with supernatural abilities, Hetinthan, Ngayantreat was surprised. His eyes changed, and he immediately shot a lightning bolt towards his target. However, it unexpectedly absorbed all the attacks. Nguyen realized that was the power of Hin Thien Tin, absorbing all attacks effortlessly. He soon revealed himself as a muscular man, appearing strong. From their conversation, it seemed like Hin Thien Tin had harmed Nguyen sister for money and was now challenging him. Nguyen initially asked who he was, but received mocking responses that infuriated him. He retaliated with a massive electrical attack, forcing him to speak. However, Hin Thien Tin easily absorbed it all. In a deadlock, Tuan decided to use his last resort, despite knowing its danger. He enhanced Nguyen entire body with electricity, causing excruciating pain at first, but ultimately restoring him with the power of a god. He asked once again, and Hin Thien Tin remained defiant, insulting a dying man. Realizing it was futile, he punched him in the face with lightning speed, sending him crashing into the building behind. Despite his opponent's persistence, Nguyen breakthrough speed and power surpassed him. Hin Thien Tin berated himself for being careless and getting hit. He vowed that the guy who dared to hit his handsome face would pay dearly. But as soon as he finished speaking, he received another punch, swelling his already bruised nose. Staggering from the ground, he still couldn't comprehend what had happened until Nguyen stood right in front of him, demanding to know who was behind it all. With each passing day, Nguyen found it increasingly hard to remain calm, continuously unleashing deadly punches without realizing his own body's limits. It wasn't until he collapsed in a pool of blood that he realized he had gone too far. His body started returning to normal, and he passed out while Hin Thien Tin remained conscious but struggling to stand. The situation became perilous for Nguyen, but Hin Thien Tin's flashy exterior and flamboyant personality remained. Before finishing off his opponent, he took a moment to mock Nguyen, recounting the humiliation he had inflicted on Nguyen sister, which disgusted everyone. Tuan, observing from outside, couldn't bear it any longer and grabbed a nearby cloth to intervene. Meanwhile, Hin Thien Tin received a call from an anonymous figure, reminding him to act quickly if operating near the association. Without hesitation, he rushed towards Nguyen, intending to deliver a powerful blow to finish him off. However, his kick unexpectedly landed on the arm of a masked figure, causing a tremendous clash that shattered everything nearby. Amidst the dust and debris, Hin Thien Tin was surprised to see the masked figure still alive, taunting him about searching for his wave motorcycle key. Although the masked figure appeared frail, his body trembled uncontrollably, refusing to accept the truth. Ignoring this, Hin Thien Tin charged at him, but received a slap in return, humiliating him further. Despite Hin Thien Tin's immaculate appearance, his face swelled like a bee sting, demonstrating the masked figure's strength. However, Tuan couldn't help but admire him for enduring so long before falling. Truly, he was a remarkable individual. After arranging Nguyen posture and staging the scene to celebrate his victory, Tuan quickly left before the cleanup crew arrived. However, to his surprise, a hero had witnessed everything. Moments later, association members rushed in, deceived into believing that Nguyen had defeated Hin Thien Tin. It seemed like Tuan's plan had succeeded. 3 days later, Lamiu visited the hospital to check on Nguyen, who was heavily bandaged like a mummy. Aware that her boss was here to reprimand her, she assured him that their opponent was an enemy, so they had to fight. Lamiu wasn't concerned about the law, as it clearly stated that if they encountered a wanted criminal, they must inform the association first rather than acting recklessly. Seeing Nguyen remorse, she decided to test his resilience by twisting his ankle, making him cry out in pain and admit his rash actions. Fortunately, with Hin Thien Tin's capture, he wouldn't be punished. Lamiu emphasized that next time, he shouldn't act impulsively but wait for complete recovery before reporting to the association. Tuan, who had been waiting outside, proudly informed Lamiu that he had saved Nguyen and even praised his new appearance. As they left the hospital courtyard, Tuan bought Lamiu an ice cream, discussing Nguyen and Hin Thien Tin's swift recovery and increased strength, which contrasted with their usual calm demeanor. The tragic death of Nguyen sister 2 months ago at their home, despite being the chairwoman of the Loi clan, remained an unsolved mystery. Her death, preceded by humiliation, was a gruesome sight. After Nguyen Totam's death, his younger brother Nguyen Treat still harbored a desire for revenge. Lamu found it heartbreaking, and as she narrated the heart-wrenching story, she noticed Tu Van was shamelessly snoring. She couldn't fathom how he could sleep through such sorrow. Waking him up with a scolding, Lamu expressed her frustration at his callousness. Recently, Lamu had been inexplicably sleepy, yet she managed to stay attentive to the story. However, she criticized Nguyen Treat's weakness despite allegedly reaching level 6. Lamu asserted that it was strange for someone at that level to meet such a fate. Tu Van recounted witnessing Nguyen Treat unleash a powerful force, presumably from the Loi lineage, a capability unique to their family. Lamu agreed, suspecting someone wanted to experiment on humans, utilizing Nguyen's abilities. Lamu immediately concurred, recognizing the potential threat of someone exploiting Nguyen's powers. However, Lamu was puzzled why Tu Van, who typically avoided involvement with others, was interested in Nguyen Treat's story. Tu Van philosophized that human curiosity was inherent, not necessarily driven by a desire to interfere in others' affairs. Subsequently, Lamu showed Tu Van a trending news article within the association. It featured an image of a mysterious figure with a hood, named Lu Kai, seeking information. Lamu suspected it was a new disguise of Tu Van's creation, which he promptly denied. Tu Van's artistic skills in creating the disguise puzzled Lamu, comparing them to a preschooler's abilities. Despite this, she decided to let it go, believing as long as no one recognized him, it served its purpose. At that moment, Lamu was solely focused on completing her task and escaping. If she had known there were others present, she wouldn't have gotten involved. Just then, Lamu received an extremely important phone call, revealing that Hin Thien Tin had escaped. After informing Tu Van, Lamu found his lack of surprise peculiar, considering it a typical trait of villains with big secrets who vanish at crucial moments. Lamu urged Tu Van to handle the remaining tasks herself, emphasizing her goal of shipping 5 orders that day. Despite Lamu's attempt to persuade him, Tu Van remained steadfast in his dedication to serving customers promptly. Lamu was furious with his seriousness, but mirrored it with her own anger, slamming her hands on the table and crying softly in frustration. Lamu's secretary, possessing level 4 psychic abilities, reported that the cameras had been checked, but no suspicious clues were found. Lamu suspected someone had tampered with the cameras or used spatial abilities in the area. Demanding a list of those within the association with spatial abilities, Lamu's secretary assured her that there were no spatial distortions within the association. However, Lamu's temper flared, dismissing any negotiation and ordering her secretary to carry out her instructions. Returning to her office, Lamu found Natka waiting, concerned about her well-being after hearing about Nguyen Treat's situation. Lamu recounted Hin Thien Tin's disappearance, suspecting foul play within the association. Natka then informed Lamu of a triangular symbol card found under the door, which Lamu recognized as a warning sign. Lamu decided to send it to the intelligence department for further investigation. Despite her frustration at the interruption, Lamu realized she couldn't pursue the case further at the moment. However, she resolved to address it later. Natka then shifted the conversation to the trending topic of the hooded figure, known as the head honcho, currently the subject of discussions and even reward offers across social media platforms. Lamu's face turned pale as she leaned closer to listen. Natka's revelation startled her. She hadn't expected the person in question to be her own brother, Tu Van. At that moment, Tu Van had arrived at their uncle's shop to pick up deliveries. Their uncle complained about Tu Van's recent absence, lamenting the lack of customers. Nevertheless, Tu Van's return was a relief, and Lamu considered him not too bad. She resolved to introduce him to suitable candidates when the opportunity arose. While Tu Van was on the road, he noticed people looking up anxiously. Following their gaze, he spotted numerous spacecraft filling the sky, equipped with advanced technology. Spotting a figure standing on one of the ships, he strained to see and imagined a familiar Star Wars character, reminding himself to continue serving valued customers despite the unusual sight. Meanwhile, within the association, There was commotion regarding the sudden appearance of spacecraft from unknown origins. Linduk, the twin brother of Lamiu's secretary, proposed a plan, advising temporary observation before action. However, before they could retract their statement, the ships unleashed a barrage of lasers, destroying structures below. With no time to spare, Linduk, the head of the intelligence department, and other officials agreed to coordinate cleanup efforts with national authorities, while Linduk accompanied Lamiu. Entering a meeting room opposite an elderly man, they found several high-ranking officials, including the red-haired Vice President Vongtam DM and the other vice presidents. Lastly, standing at the highest position was Tadiep Thientan. Despite the report from the siblings, Tadiep Thientan hesitated to act, insisting on following protocol. Despite their efforts to persuade him, the council agreed to the president's plan, with only the red-haired vice president advocating for immediate action, swiftly silenced by the president. Linduk, frustrated, expressed a desire to fight in civilian attire, but was silenced by his elder brother. He then appealed to the president to execute the orders. They would await further instructions, respecting the president's decision. Returning to the city recently attacked, Tuan's home was now in ruins, while the culprit ships continued to hover menacingly above. This sight enraged Tuan, who vowed that the attackers wouldn't escape this time.